So tonight's a little different. We're just going to kind of do the speaker meeting. Sure how long she'll go for. So hopefully everybody's got their coffee and stuff. She can be long-winded every once in a while. But I'm excited to hear from her. She's always got good stuff to say. She's got good stuff when she, shares and everything. So it's going to be quite interesting. I'm going to try and keep everybody on mute. I'm going to keep an eye when people come in, make sure they go right to mute so that nobody bugs you, so we don't trip you up or anything. But the floor is yours, Laura Ann, and you do what you want. And when you're done, just say done, and we can go on to something different, or we can all talk about how much you changed our lives, which is what's probably going to happen.
Doubt that.
So
okay.
I am...
All right. So I didn't really plan anything, but I figure I'll just kind of start from the beginning because my mental health started very early, or my SMI. So I grew up fairly normal nuclear family. Mom and dad are still together to this day. Older sister, 4.5 years older than me. Things were pretty regular growing up. My dad is an alcoholic. I don't have a lot of memories of that, but he's sober now. But I do, almost recently, when I've had to do some trauma recall and stuff, I've kind of had flashbacks where, we were going to go to my grandparents for the weekend or for the day. We didn't sleep over there. Because they lived 2 hours away. And, my dad wouldn't come home Friday night. So then my mom would be mad because we were supposed to be going Saturday. And then he wouldn't come home Saturday. And then they'd be in a big fight. So I remember a couple times him obviously being on a bender and not coming home. But no one ever really said what he did. And no one ever, and he didn't really drink at home, which is the other thing. And so I guess he was a binge drinker, but not an everyday drinker unless he was drinking every day. But I really don't think he was. We don't talk a lot about emotions in my family. My mom is a very emotional person and my dad is like a brick wall. So I'm more like my dad. So the first, occurrence of mental health stuff was when I was 9. And this is the stupidest story, and I've only told my therapist, so I haven't even told my parents this, but when I was 9, we were listening to No Doubt, and I remember the song, and I had this thought that I had to sing it or someone was going to die, and I didn't sing it because I was very shy. Just another weird thing about me. I was shy all my life. I don't know what happened now. But so that I had to sing this certain part or something. And if I didn't do it, someone was going to die. And then that night, not that I knew her, but Princess Diana died. And my mom was a wreck. I don't know how someone that I guess I do now, but my mom was big on the royal family. She's Scottish, all that. So she was devastated. And then I remember little things like that from growing up, but I wasn't diagnosed right then and there, obviously. But that's my first recollection of OCD, which I didn't actually get diagnosed with until this year, but I was aware I had OCD. But this summer I got diagnosed OCD and PTSD, and I had no idea really that I had PTSD, and I didn't think OCD was something I needed medication for because I thought I had it under control. I didn't really recognize that I had OCD until I was 15, what it was. I was doing, I'm not going to skip that far ahead. Okay, then let's go to 11 years old. We were in British Columbia. We were hiking this mountain called the Chief. And there's this part at the top at the first peak where you have to go up this ladder and you climb, and then you go up to the top, do the viewing. And it's just because it's really steep, so it's added support, and you go up this chain and stuff. So we went up that way. We went to the top, and then coming down, my dad lost his footing when we were on that part, and that area, we went down the part where there wasn't a chain, so it was just straight like that. So he lost his footing, and he went over and he fell 30 feet, right in front of us. My sister and I ran down to get help. I say a lot when I'm nervous. My sister's friend who had knee problems stayed up with him. We ran into a doctor oddly in the middle of running down, And apparently, like, we never went back up, but apparently he went to the top and made a splint for my dad's foot. So, like, because it had literally, like, was, not to be graphic, but it was hanging by, like, a thread. So he splinted his foot. We went down, and this was, like, long before cell phones really a thing. And there was a campsite at the bottom, so I tried to go into the office, but there was no one there. And then so we just, like, ran up. Like, I was 11, and my sister would have been 16, 15, and we, like, ran to all these tents, and we just started banging. And I think it was pretty early. Like, I think we hiked at, like, 7, so this was probably, like, 9 a.m., and we were just, like, banging on tents. Like, all these people are probably hungover as fuck, and, like, what are these kids doing? So one of them ended up having one of these, like, GPS phone things, so he managed to get the police down there. The police came. They sent people up, and we were like, there's no way you're going to get him down. Like, you need to get a helicopter. But they decided to send their crew up first. They got up there, and they were like, yeah, there's no way this man's getting down. So he got airlifted off. He went to the hospital. We waited in the hospital there for him, but when he came in, he was like, he had a ton of, like, tubes on him, and I just remember, like, I grabbed his arm, but they were like, just, like, stay back, because they had to put, like, breathing tubes in him and stuff. The hospital he was at didn't have adequate support for him, so they had to transfer him to Vancouver General, and then he was in ICU for, like, 3 months, I think. No, maybe, yeah, I don't know how long. ICU for a while. And then he wasn't cleared for flying because he broke, or he punctured both of his lungs. He broke a few ribs, and his ribs punctured the lungs, broke his collarbone. His foot had to be skin grafted back on. And he wasn't safe to fly, and it wasn't really safe in his condition to take the train back, because if anything happened, there was no way to get him help. So my aunt lives in BC, and she's a nurse, so she took care of him until he could fly, and then he came home. We went back early because we went back to school, and I remember there's all these, like, little weird things that I remember that I'm like, oh, I wonder if this affected me. But I still remember my grade 7 teacher saying to me, like, how was your summer? And I was like, oh, like, it was okay. And I was pretty shy, and I was just like, and she was like, oh, like, what happened? And I'm like, oh, like, kind of a big accident, like, where don't really want to talk about it. And then she asked, like, well, where is your dad? And I said, he's still in BC. And then she said, I would have never came back if my husband had hurt himself, and, like, I would have kept my kids out of school. And I was just like, okay. So then I kind of felt like a piece of shit for leaving. And then my mom had got a new job at the time that my dad had not obviously, but he had a physical job, so he had to retire early. And then my mom had started a new job, and, like, when we were on vacation, the lady who was washing her stuff for her had been stealing from her and all this stuff. So there's a bunch of shit we had to deal with when we got back. And I really, really started being very quiet and shy. And I just wanted to fade away. Like, I didn't want to be a burden anymore. And I didn't want to bug my mom because she had all this shit to deal with that, like, people were stealing from her. My dad has, like, a million health issues. My sister was kind of in a party stage, like, she was 16, 17. So I just, I think I just felt so out of control. And I began starving myself, which I don't really recall, like, a certain moment of starting having an eating disorder. But it went downhill pretty quickly. And I refused to believe I was sick, even though I knew I was. And I got to a point where I was sleeping downstairs because I was afraid I was going to have a heart attack, and, like, no one would find me in the morning or, like, come into my room. But if I was on the couch, they'd see me more easily, which is, like, a bizarre thought. But I remember that's why I did it. And I slept downstairs for, like, years. It was a pull-out couch. I think they bought me a pull-out couch because I wouldn't sleep upstairs. But, like, I just have always had these weird fears. And they're always death-related, and a lot of them are just, like, intrusive thoughts, and if I don't do stuff that someone will die. And it's been, it's kind of affected, like, everything. I lose focus pretty easily and just, like, zone out, and I realized that I found out later that they think that that's like part of the PTSD, that I just kind of like close down when things start to get tough. And obviously I use humor to deflect all the time. So if I'm ever laughing in a meeting too, and you're not saying something serious, I'm not laughing at you, I swear. I just have weird reactions to people. And then, so then I'm starving myself. I turned 15 and my mom brought me to the doctor, and they told me that I was going in for an eating disorder. I think it was like just like a checklist thing. Like they wanted to check off if I had it and connect me with some supports, which ended up leading straight to hospitalization. I was like 60 something pounds, and like, I think it was 50% of the weight I was supposed to be. So then they hospitalized me, and then you're supposed to stay in the hospital until you're 95% of a healthy weight. But I was really manipulative even back then, and I said anything I could, and I knew how to like manipulate my parents, and I did, and I got out of the hospital at 80% of a healthy weight, which isn't recommended. And then like for 3 years I was in and out of hospital. I still don't understand really, but I always managed to get out by like 85% when they recommend 95 to 100% of your healthy weight. So yeah, I was always getting out early. The longest I went without being hospitalized, I swear, was just because a doctor told me she thought that I was incurable and I was going to die. And I like I just wanted to prove her wrong. It was just my stubborn nature. I was like, fuck off, I can do this. So I started eating, but it's the same as like stopping drinking. It's like, okay, so I've treated a symptom, but I didn't treat anything else. And then when you so then my last therapy session was right before my 18th birthday, and the lady, and I was also, again, I was like deadly shy. All of my therapy sessions, I usually just sat there and stared at the person. Like I couldn't imagine having a client like me, to be honest. It would have been super awkward. So then, so I had my last therapy session. Oh, and I did this study. It was brought from from Britain, I think it was. And it was like a family study for eating disorders. And you do like all these family groups and stuff. And my dad is so shy. He wouldn't even come in. Like he couldn't even sit in the room, and I think it was because there was so much like emotion talking going on. So he waited in the car. He came every day. He drove us, and he waited in the car every day, which, but I didn't feel like that. I never felt like that was against me. I knew he was like extremely socially anxious, and so was I. So maybe that's why I could kind of understand why he couldn't come in. I just didn't understand why I was wasting his time coming when he couldn't go in. But anyway, so he didn't come in. The end of that study, they made us write letters to our eating disorder. And I still remember my parents, or them reading mine, and they read them. The therapist read them, but she didn't say whose was whose. And there was I think 8 of us in the study. So they read our letters, and mine, it was something like I'll never, please don't leave me. I have no choice until I'm 18. Please be waiting for me, blah, blah, blah. I want to run on the beach with you, and all this shit. That terrified everybody. I remember my mom grabbed my arm and just said, just please tell me that one letter wasn't you. And I lied. I was like, no, it wasn't. So then I get closer to my 18th birthday. My therapist told me she thought I would die by 25, and that she would give me the information to Toronto General for adult eating disorder help. But basically, if you're not open and willing to do it, there's no point. And she said, I don't believe you will go through with it. So they called me 3 times. Once they call you 3 times, if you don't answer, they don't call you back. So I was out of the system for eating disorders. And then that's when I started partying, I guess. I drank before, and I'd had pretty serious consequences. I got suspended and puked on a cop, one of the first times I got drunk. Or shit my pants, doing a million Jell-O shots, when I was 16 or 17. I never could have a drink and not want 20 of them. There were definitely people always say, I never had one drink. I did have one drink many times, but I never didn't want more, and I never wanted to stop. But I loved that feeling of just escaping and being gone. And but I was never really suicidal, other than one time when I was really drunk, which I don't think really counts as suicidal. But yeah, it wasn't that I didn't want to live. I don't know. I didn't want to be seen. Like, if I had been in this quarantine a few years ago, I probably would be so miserable, but happy, saying this is the best. So then, where are we? So then when I'm 18, drinking I guess virginity. So when I was 17 or 18, I'm not sure, I had a guy over, and we had a few coolers. We were watching Bam Margera's show, and then he tried to touch me, and then I eventually pushed him off. And then and that was over. And then at another party, I was dating this guy, and I actually ended up dumping him because I wasn't ready to have sex yet, or I didn't think I was. And he dumped me and drove me home from the party. And then so then this friend group there all knew that I didn't want to sleep with anyone. And then the next party I went to, I was in a blackout, and the guy who I was dating's friend slept with me, and I don't remember. And then I don't like to call it rape, because I don't know, I'm still kind of talk to the guy, which is bizarre. But he's kind of in a group of friends that I've known since I was 14. So everyone else was saying I was raped. I don't really care the terminology, to be honest, and I've moved past it. But I think that those experiences made sex to not be that important to me. I find sex fun and enjoyable, and I don't find it something that you need to have all of these feelings towards. But hopefully maybe one day that'll change. And then, so I'm 18. I just started partying a lot, mostly just weed and alcohol. But then the eating disorder would come in. So I would do fitness stuff. I would get a personal trainer and be hardcore healthy for 3 months. And then I would go the other way, and I would just party every day. And a lot of partying, and a lot of losing things, or people having to carry me home, or getting lost. My nickname was Houdini, because I used to say I was going for a cigarette, and then I would jump in a cab. Whether or not I got home is a different story. And then, I always was able to keep a job. I worked in a lot of restaurants too. The one thing was I was really good at serving, which is not something I'm proud of, but there were times where alcohol got in the way of my work, and they forgave me because I was their best server, and not because they wanted to forgive me, I don't think. There was one time where I was hammered, and I had been finishing up at one restaurant and starting at the other, and I got hammered before my shift, and then my first table, I don't even know what I said to them. I was in a blackout already, but apparently I tried to sell them a salmon burger, which we didn't have on the menu. And that's a joke now. Every time I talk to my old boss, Duncan, he's always so I was got any good salmon burger recipes and shit like that. So this bar, I worked at many crazy bars, but this bar was we were encouraged to drink on shift. I mean, the GM was an alcoholic, so we had shots all the time, drinking all the time. I generally could kind of scale it back, but it was also a kind of a college dumpy bar, where people will go and just get shit-faced anyway, so you don't really need your server to be all that good. But at that point, I think I worked there for 3 years. I was drunk every day. I actually quit the job because I was me and my ex were getting into fights every day because I was coming home wasted at 5 a.m. But on top of that, I was I don't know if I can live like this anymore. I'm almost 30. I'm partying every single night. Oh yeah, and then I skipped my coke phase, but I just, that's not really much of a story. I just started dating a guy that did coke, and then I tried it, and I did it every day for 2 years. But I quit that on my own without rehab or anything. And then it was just the drinking. The drinking was the thing that, even though I do everything 100% pretty much, Like if you were to say like go to the gym 3 times a week, it would be hard for me not to go 7. So it's either I'm going never or I'm going every day. Like I'm very black and white thinking, and I'm trying to work on balance, but that's not my strong suit. So yeah, party, switch jobs. Then I became a manager at the next restaurant, and we were allowed to have like 2 drinks a day or something or if after our shift. And then the manager would sometimes have her glass of wine on shift, but she was not an alcoholic. She would have like 2 drinks all day. But so then I just started putting vodka in my drink at work. And then like there was one shift I just walked out. I like left the restaurant and I was in a blackout. And luckily the guy serving with me was a good friend, but he called me to make sure I was okay later. And he was like, I didn't even know, like you were making drinks so quickly, like you took orders. He's like, I couldn't believe there's these 2 old people that had like their specific order and specific drink. And he's like, and it's like hard to ring in. And he was like, you had that, like you got all their stuff in and then you just bailed. And I was like, ugh, don't remember that. So yeah, lots of blackouts. And then just avoiding any help. I just like, there's not a whole lot of like recovery in any of this, because from 18 when I got let go from the hospital until probably 30, I had no help, which like no mental health help. Then I went to college. I originally went for child and youth work because I wanted to work with special needs. And then they told you to do a practicum somewhere where you were uncomfortable to just try out that field. So I did it on an adolescent psych ward and I loved it. And I was like, oh, these are my people. Like I was just, and like, it's such a weird energy on a psych ward because it's like calm, but then you never know when someone's going to blow up. And I love that. I love never know. And I love being kept on my feet, I guess. So that environment was very interesting, but tough. I'm not an emotional person. And my first day, there was like a 16-year-old that tried to commit suicide that got brought in. And I just went home and I cried. I was like, oh my God, this girl's so cute and sweet. And like, what has she done at 16? But then I was like, no, I was like, you got through the whole day. Like, yeah, it's weighing on you, but a lot of people wouldn't be able to do this. And you can, and you understand kind of where she's coming from. So I decided to continue on and work in mental health. So I finished my placement. I actually got a couple of job offers, but then I got a DUI at McDonald's. I think I shared that one on a dopey Zoom. So got my DUI. That really fucked me up. And then that was in May of the year before I moved to BC, and I moved by August, because things were just starting. My parents, I was staying with them for a bit. They were on to my drinking. I was hiding and drinking in the bath. I would say I'm having a bath, lock the door, and drink wine, and then my mom would come in and find me drunk. There were days she'd come in my room and I would pretend I was sleeping, but then she'd pull the cover off and see that I had a bottle of wine in bed with me. And yeah, and then I got a condo. And I started drinking all the time, like anytime I didn't have to be somewhere, I was drinking. I drank and drove all the time, which is awful. But there was one time I fell asleep driving home from school at like 6 p.m., been drinking since like 11 a.m. And I fell asleep, and this lady was stopped. Like I fell asleep, woke up, and she was like, come over, like you just fell asleep. And I was like, yeah, let me meet you up there. And I like pointed to somewhere else. I was like, just to avoid traffic. And I jumped on the highway and booked it home. And then I was drunk enough that I actually stopped for fast food on the way while I'm possibly have the cops coming after me. And yeah, so then I moved to BC to get away from all that stuff. And well, it wasn't to get away from that. It was to get away from having to quit drinking, because everyone was kind of telling me basically that I needed to stop. And then, yeah, I was drinking. Then I started pretty much just drinking and not eating again. So then I got really thin. And then I started dating my ex, and he's an amazing human, and he really helped me identify that even though like maybe I can be normal for a night or two, like I'm just always ending up, I'm like one drink away from a week or two of binge drinking and crying on the floor and throwing up and like all this crazy shit. Like I've gone through so many detoxes. So many times I've been sitting there just like chugging vodka and puking while I was chugging it just to get past the like pain physically. And yeah, so then, but it was pretty much from when I was 18 until this last year that I was just drinking every day pretty much. And then there was a big issue. We were supposed to go to Mexico, me and my ex. I think I told this one in a Zoom, and all this crazy, I like got drunk. I fell asleep. I didn't make the flight. He dumped me. Although he also turned his alarm off, and apparently that if I woke up, he was going to stay with me, and if I didn't, he wasn't. So I think that was kind of a dick move. Like, at least wake me up for my flight if you're not going to come. But because it was a flight with my family. But anyways, that's another story. So then when I came back, he was like, you have like a serious issue. You need help. So we were broken up, but we were still living together, and he was happy for me to get my shit together if I agreed to not drink. So I started looking into rehabs, and I couldn't afford it personally, and I couldn't ask. My parents have the money. I don't like asking for things. They've paid for my school in my adult life, and that's it. Like, yeah, they pay like if I go out for dinner, but I don't like to ask for money. I've always liked to work for my money. And I've always had 2-3 jobs at least. Like, I'm a workaholic. Like, I'm an everything-aholic. So then I was looking. So then I decided to do an outpatient program. I was like, I've got this. It's fine. Like, I just need some help. So I started going, and there was like pee testing and stuff, and it was random. But I remember this one night. It was 2 years ago. Because it was my birthday. No, it was 1 year ago. Sorry. So it was a year ago, and we went up to Whistler for my birthday, and I'd been sober for 3 months. I think it was like 9 days or something. And it was my birthday, and I was like, I wonder if I can like make Dave let me have some drinks. So he wanted to go to this nice steakhouse, and I was like, I'm not really feeling steak without wine. And he was like, oh, do you want to do it tomorrow? And I was like, well, I have a urine test on Monday, so I'd rather like do it tonight. So then I have 3 days to get it out of my system. And like, it took just like 1 second of someone being like, okay, that's fine, you can have a drink, to from May till June to being like fucked up, I ended up on a boat. I ended up with a girl on ketamine who like stole my wallet, but then gave it back. Like, it was like a very, very crazy week of my life at the last like binge. Actually, I think it was 2 weeks, that one. And then I had a trip planned for Ontario for my nephew's birthday. The flight was already booked, and my ex was like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. And it wasn't like, I hate you. It was like, he actually said to me, which was probably like the worst thing I've ever heard, was, I can't come home from work and have to call the police because your body is dead in the bed. Like, I can't do that. So yeah, that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever been told. And then, so I came back. I was like, okay, I need to go to rehab. My parents have the money. They're offering, let's go. So I think that was like June 30th, and I was in rehab by mid-July. So then I was there for 6 weeks. I was so shy. I had a couple buddies that like I hung out with. Everyone thought I was like the funny girl that would tell jokes, which I am. But I never talked in group unless it was a joke. Until week 5. So like week 5, I started kind of getting the program, and then I had to leave the next week. Went to a cottage like right out of rehab, and I was so jealous of my sister and her boyfriend drinking, even though they weren't drinking much. My dad doesn't drink. My mom might have had a drink, but I just could not stop thinking about booze. And then it was like 3 more days, and I went actually, I guess this is like a triggering thing, so I won't say, but I like bought booze, snuck it in the house in like a crazy way. And I would like run up to the pub and like get shots and stuff. And then I went to go to my, what's it called, aftercare class. And instead I went to Toronto and got hammered and lost my phone, and I somehow came home with $100 vibrator. I booked a consult for a tattoo for my whole back, and I don't have a single tattoo. Like it was just like crazy. And then so I wake up and I was like, oh my God, I'm doing it again. And my mom was screaming because obviously I came in falling over. I had to take a cab home, and I like bought myself a coffee to try to keep myself awake. And the cab driver, right when I got in, was like, you have to pay before you get in. And I like spilled like this large coffee on my leg and like had a pretty bad burn. And then like every drinking story for me, it's just like one thing and the next and the next and the next and the next until I wake up and get filled in on what happened. So then I got 6 months clean. I got a job. I was going to the gym. I was doing all that good stuff. And then I have a bit of a weird relationship with one of my bosses. And it's not something I'm proud of, but he's married, and I've known him for about 8 years, and we kind of were seeing each other 8 years ago, but I was partying way too much. And then he gave me a job back when I came back just because I needed one. And he's like one of my really good friends. But I knew I wouldn't make a move on him sober, and I knew he wouldn't make a move on me sober, but I knew if I was drunk, I would. So I gave in and went for drinks one night with him, and we hooked up. And then I drank with him one more time, and we hooked up. And then I started like secretly having bottles of wine at night alone. And then COVID hit, and I just stocked up, and I went nuts. And then I was like, what am I doing? Like, I've been hiding this again for a couple of months. Like, your parents just put like 30 grand down for rehab. Like, you're a fucking idiot. Just getting down on myself. And I think I was still drunk when I did it, but I like sent a text to my mom and sister, and I was just like, I relapsed. Like, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to scare you because I know you can't come over right now, but I just wanted to let you know, like, I want this and I'm working towards it. And then, and then there was like some other little shit where there's a 1-day relapse, but I'm not too worried about that anymore. And I guess a few other things. I worked at a daycare where an infant died, and that was probably next to my dad's accident, like one of the most traumatic days of my life. And I got investigated not for child neglect or abuse or anything, but pretty heavily. I wasn't even in the room where he was, but I had asked for a transfer out of that room. It was the infant room, and then I asked for a transfer into toddlers at the time because I couldn't stand the teachers, and I didn't. I was like, I'm they're so lazy. Like, sometimes in the infant room, you're always moving, except nap time, and they the one lady wouldn't stand up ever. She would scream at kids for not using a spoon, and I'm like, they're fucking a year and a half. Like, they need food in their body. And I don't know, we just didn't agree. I didn't agree on how they treated the babies. So I'd asked for a transfer into another room. And then someone told the police that, and the police were just on me for everything that these girls had done. And I don't think that they did anything to hurt the baby, but I don't know if it was at daycare or at home either, but I think he was dropped somewhere and we don't know because his brain hemorrhaged. So that was pretty hard too. And the guy I was dating at the time then, Dan, he was the coke addict. And he wouldn't let me talk about it because he'd had an ex-girlfriend that had an abortion without telling him, and he was didn't want to talk about baby death. So I never actually really talked about that until I went to therapy recently. So that was I don't know, there's just all these things that it was shut down. Either I shut myself down or someone else shut me down from talking about. And I think it was just a big buildup of all the shit I didn't talk about. And at night I could just release it, and I could drink and I could forget it, sleep, and then start a new day the next day. And now I'm here. I found Dopey in September and I love it. I'm already listening to it for the second time. I really like their I really like the idea of, yes, using the 12 steps and using that tool. But I think the whole part about it is really finding that community that you're comfortable with, finding people you can talk to, and support and willingness to change, which I know is part of AA. And it doesn't have to be God. It doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be 100% sobriety. Like, I'm totally on board with the idea of people who can use socially, which I can't. I know that. But like, everyone is different, and I don't think that there can be judgment in any recovery. And I think that's what I really liked about Dopey. And I also have like a weird obsession with anyone who's died. Like when Corey Monteith from what's that musical show? I can't remember what it's called, but when he died, I'd never seen a single episode, nor was I interested in the show. And I watched the whole thing just to be like, can I see it? Can I see it? Like, I think I have a weird thought, Glee. There you go. I have a weird like thing in my brain where I'm like, where is the mental health? Where is the, like, I want to see it because I want to be able to recognize it in me and in others. And it's like one of those things that you just can't see, unfortunately, most of the time. But yeah, now I am here. I'm living in a basement in quarantine and hanging out with my cat and talking to you guys. And I think I'm done with that. Sorry, that was all like up and down. I'm not really sure what I talked about.